they go to NBC and they say, here's a great idea for a show. It's a show about nothing, which is essentially the idea behind Seinfeld itself, which is sort of the joke. And everyone's very confused by this, and thinks it's a ridiculous idea, or thinks it's an amazing idea, even though they don't really have an idea. And so there's a long-running gag. And if every so often somebody will say, but things can happen, right? And then somebody will say, no, nothing can happen. Absolutely not. It's a slippery slope.
Was your childhood the happiest time in your life?
It was very unhappy, but it probably was the happiest time of my life. Thanks for making me realize that.
Did you have a close relationship with your parents growing up?
Not exactly. I mean, the extent that I had a close relationship with my mother, which was that it was terrible. I did, on the other hand, have a close relationship with my grandmother, who was very kind. But her ability to control and affect my life was limited.
And Alon, were you close with your family growing up?
Yeah. Especially my mother.
And I understand you don't talk with your mother anymore?
Yeah. When I came out to them, relations went south. And so I don't speak to them anymore. For like 6 months we continued to speak, and it didn't go well. And then they faded out of my life.
And Alon, was your childhood the happiest time of your life?
I've always been content, equally content, except perhaps for a brief period of time where I was forced to go to a pretentious high school. Long Island is an awful, awful, terrible, terrible place where people are extremely angry for no reason whatsoever, and are very, very sad, or slightly more sad than everyone else. And this comes through in day-to-day interaction with other people around you, including those people that you go to high school with. And I went to college, and everything was fine after that. The first time I met Ryan in person, we met in New York City, where I was working over the summer. We met at a place called Cipriani, and we talked for an hour or two or three. And that was the first time that we had spoken in person after a very lengthy email correspondence. And the second I told Ryan that I was Kurdish, he was smitten.
That's probably true.
Yeah. He just had to have me from that moment. That's my guess.
Okay.
What was it about being Kurdish?
He's got the hots for the Kurds.
Remind us how long you have been married?
Going on 7 years. This year. Right?
That sounds right, yes.
And how long did you know each other before getting married?
1 year, so we've known each other for a little over 7 years.
Where does the name Norbauer come from?
It's a sloppy portmanteau of Nori and Schiffbauer, and so my maiden name was Nori, N-O-U-R-I, and Ryan's was Schiffbauer, and so we combined Nor from Nori and Bauer, but then we obviously mangled the letters a little bit to make it a little less ugly, so we removed the U from Nori, so it's N-O-R.
And before considering anything, our first priority was to do an Internet Whois search on it to make sure that the .com domain name was available.
Do you plan to have children?
So, yeah, this is...
What do you mean by have them?
I will
like
not have
for
them.
dinner?
I will not brook their existence. This is the other area in which I have something almost resembling a moral belief, which is that the only... Insofar as any moral statement can be made, condemning anything, I would say that the only act that is inherently cruel, that is wrong, it is the having of children. I mean, I don't like children that exist, also. I sort of would prefer to keep them away from me, but that's a separate matter. The much more weighty concern is the bringing children into the world. Fortunately, we're not biologically equipped to do that, so there's no peril in that regard. It has always struck me as an act of extreme vanity to wish to perpetuate an image of oneself at the cost of another person's being brought into the world to, you know, struggle and strive and have things, you know, to want things that they cannot have, and to have a small subset of those things that they want, and then have them ultimately be taken away from them. How a person could ever knowingly inflict that on another sentient being, I cannot fathom.
And Ryan, what is your philosophy of life?
I don't believe that I have a philosophy of life, per se.
And are you happy?
I have a life stance.
You have a life stance?
Yes. Which is that I'm against it.
Could you explain for the curious observer why do you feel against the world and against life?
To be more precise, the thing that I'm actually against is natural selection. The process by which we are accidentally brought into existence. For no purpose, entirely by accident, and as the sort of mindless marionette instruments of a process that has aims that do not have our own happiness in mind. And in fact, that do not even have any conscious aims, are completely blind and accidental and purposeless. But insofar as they have aims, we know that they are not our own. Yet this process urges upon us all sorts of desires and needs, and strivings and strugglings, that generally, even if occasionally bring us fleeting moments of pleasure, ultimately will lead us to, you know, yearn and struggle and strive for things that will be taken away from us, and that we may not ever even get in the first place. That to me seems to be a ridiculously cruel premise for existence. So.
If you do have such a bleak, dim view of the universe, Ryan,
you may call it bleak or dim. I call it merely factual. I have emotions in response to this understanding, and they are not uniformly positive. But I don't think it's a bleak or dim view, right? It's just, it is what it is.
Why do you not see suicide as a logical response?
I do, absolutely. Are you asking why I don't?
Yes.
Suicide?
Yes.
Cowardice, fear of the unknown, fear of failure, and I'm, you know, that it's certainly against my behavioral inertia in living out the daily affairs of my life to take such a final action that is kind of dogmatic in nature, right? If my existence on a day-to-day basis were so miserable that not existence seemed strongly preferable, I mean, which I suppose it kind of does abstractly. I never wake up and think to myself, I want to be dead today. It just doesn't come up. So I'd really have to think myself into that position, which I can easily do. Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously. There are some people who are made very uncomfortable by the notion of people who think about suicide a lot. And I think that it is my like constant, lifelong, day-to-day engagement with the question of like whether I should kill myself or not that really makes me okay not killing myself. There's this writer, Cioran, is a great French pessimist. You call him a philosopher, I suppose, but he wrote these kind of books of epigrams, and he also thought about suicide all the time and was very interested in always having. Lovecraft was the same way. He slept with a bottle of cyanide by his bed every day, right? And this comes up in his letters a lot. It's like just knowing that option is there allows you to somewhat more consciously take the choice to live today, right? And to be a little bit more engaged with life, and just it makes it makes being alive something about other than just blind inertia, and I like that idea. I like the making of the choice, but I have nothing against. I would not rule out making a different choice at some other time, and I'd feel more comfortable if I had that button to press right next to my bed.
Alon, would it make you feel more comfortable if Ryan had a bottle of cyanide next to the bed?
Whatever. I don't care.
Uh,
I don't think Ryan's gonna kill himself, so it's not a problem. If I did, then that would be very problematic, and I would take away the cyanide.
Alon, you once expressed a hope for Ryan. What was that hope?
I would be very happy. I consider this somewhat of a lifelong goal. If at the moment of Ryan's death, like in his last breath, not in the moment of his death, but that 1 second where he knows he's going to die and it's his last breath, I would love it if he could achieve some kind of security and things that he thought either fleeting or impossible his whole life. So, for example, I would love it if in his last breath he thought to himself, hey, Olin probably actually liked me because he stuck around until this last breath. I didn't think it was going to happen, but here we are, and so I guess it did happen, and so I'm all set. Or, not snoring, but, it's death sound.
And Ryan, do you feel convinced that Alon loves you?
I do.
Just not certain.
Right. I'm incapable of any form of absolute certainty or absolute non-belief, right? And so the intellectually and at some level, at the level of my insecurity, I'm very unsure of the question of Alon's fundamental love of me, and that would endure over time. In the same way that I'm unsure of everything, and am dogged by my insecurities and doubt and fundamental skepticism. But that's just that's sort of a pedantic observation. Obviously I know that Alon loves me more than I could conceive of any person loving anyone else. And that is at the level of knowledge for me, right? But then there's always this this nagging, uncertain part of myself that questions everything, and always serves charmingly to remind me of worst case scenarios, and always to be alert to them. This is it's part of my makeup and my wiring. Alon, by comparison, is just inherently.
It's the part where your wiring is not connected.
Perhaps. I don't know. I mean,
it's the broken part of your
wiring,
not part of your wiring.
Look, anxiety and preoccupation with things that might possibly go wrong obviously has some potential.
Not might possibly go wrong, but absolute worst case scenarios.
Right. Well, it's a subtle dance between being completely crippled in life and your ancestors having been a little bit better at predicting bad things that actually did happen, right? And my ancestors, unfortunately, were good at that and were rewarded by having children, or punished, depending on how you look at it. And I am, alas, one of their progeny. You, on the other hand, are untroubled by this kind of psychological makeup. I have not collected a single data point in my life to suggest that Alon does not fundamentally love me and wouldn't want to spend every one of his days to his last moment with me, and completely, blindly cherishing and celebrating the most horrible things I could possibly do. I have no data contrary to that fact. Yet there is a part of me that fundamentally is sure that he will leave me tomorrow.
Yeah. So implicit in what I was saying was, implicit in my hope is that is the acknowledgement that Ryan is incapable of this before his last breath.
And Alon, do you feel confident that Ryan loves you?
Yeah.
That wasn't the most unequivocal thing I've ever heard.
I was thinking about what the funniest way of putting it was, but couldn't come up with anything.
You used to be an ambitious person, I understand.
I would say that ambition probably was my primary source of meaning in life, yeah. The desire to sort of get validation for my existence by doing things that would make me feel like I were meritorious and that I didn't need to be insecure for all the things that I'm insecure about. As if I could, hold up some certificate and say, yes, but here's this. Seriously, I'm I'm okay. I firstly and mainly wanted to be a professor. And I didn't really care what kind of professor, I didn't care what the subject was, I just wanted to be like, you know, professional smart guy.
With a pipe.
Yes, that sort of thing. So I pursued an academic career for a while. And then, you know, sort of fled from my disappointments in that realm into business, and was equally plagued by I found ways of ruining, I've always found ways of ruining anything I was doing by making them be about my need to prove and validate myself, which is fundamentally insatiable. And that, that very insatiability is something that made me work far too hard, and with far too much, you know, I impregnated my work with so much emotion and need that it, you know, even though I was very effective, it was extremely unrewarding. And after a series of multiple such projects, which, you know, sort of on paper were very successful, yet to me were extraordinary failures. Alon pointed out to me kindly that doing such things was making me miserable, and that maybe I should stop doing them. And the fact is, Alon couldn't possibly care less about my achievements in the academic or professional realms. I mean,
Sorry.
The the very idea is farcical, right? If anything, Alon is put off by those things. And you know, I increasingly realize that the people whom I do admire and enjoy, whose company I enjoy, are people who fit into this category, people who are not themselves impressed by superficial forms of accomplishment.
Do you believe in God? Did you ever?
I used to be an arch Catholic. So there was a time when I was in high school, freshman in high school, I was very close with my best friend, and we happened into a romantic relationship quite by accident. And at some point, like a shockingly long period after that, I realized that this might make me gay. And so, you know, I recognized pretty early on that this was incompatible with Christianity, and I became, you know, a nominal atheist. And
Wait, what was the order?
I'm about to chronicle my flip-flopping on this matter.
Okay.
So I wasn't, you know, I styled myself as an atheist when I was sort of young in my high school career. And then at some point, I thought it would be interesting to explore some form of religion, or to try and believe in something. And so I explored various religious doctrines, and the religion of my parents was Presbyterianism, which as far as I could tell had nothing to do with Christianity other than just like having coffee afterwards and like social networking among accountants and bankers and lawyers. And this, I did not find this inherently compelling. So I explored various religions, various manifestations of Christianity. I even like read C.S. Lewis and all of that bullshit. And eventually came to be very interested in Catholic doctrine, particularly the notion of sin as being a rupture of one's relationship with God. And that if one did not believe that a behavior was inherently sinful, or that it was an intentional rupturing of one's relationship with God, that it was not in the eyes of the church considered to be a sin. That there are no behaviors other than those specifically called out in the Ten Commandments that are inherently sinful, other than those that meet this criterion. And I found this idea interesting, and I also found the aesthetics of the Catholic liturgy to be very compelling. You know, I like incense and holy water and all of that. It's like it makes things much more interesting.
I love the thing on the rope that's smoking.
Yeah, exactly.
What is that?
It's called a censer. It's you know, emits incense.
Those things are cool.
Yeah, and like, you know, particularly also all of the ideas around the Eucharist in Catholicism are very interesting to me because it is explicitly magical. There are most Protestant religions don't really buy into the literality of the Eucharist, other than some Lutherans. But Catholics, like, they really believe that the bread is transformed in a literal, magical way by the priest into the flesh and body of Jesus Christ. This idea is very weird and kind of cool, right? There's this tradition that was created by this person who existed 2,000 years ago, who had this final meal of his and said, I'm a magical creature from the sky god who has been sent down to do magical things for you, and I'm giving you this tradition, and I'm giving the magic to you, Peter, my priest. Go on, keep doing this. And so this guy, he goes off to Rome, and then he founds a church, and then all of his successors are directly anointed by that person to continue doing this and to have this magic. And it's symbolized by the literal laying on of hands, when someone becomes a priest. And so there's this direct chain from Jesus to the priest who's standing in your parish there of physical touch, that he is transforming this substance in a magical way. And there's something very ridiculous and cool about that absurd idea. It's so ridiculous that it appeals to the part of me that loves flouting convention and loves things that are unconventional and ridiculous. And so I found all of this very cool and compelling and exciting. And so I decided, particularly because it would piss everyone off in my family and in my community, to convert to Catholicism. So I went through that process. It took a year or something. You have to learn all about all of the things that I just told you about. And that was cool. The thing that truly drove me away from religion was, it was around the time, but it was after this, when I, probably within my first 2 or 3 weeks of being at university, I had multiple courses that instructed me in the scientific method as a sort of prerequisite to a research methods course, and I was having biology 101, and these very straightforward things that just they have a first chapter. We're going to learn science now, and here's how to think like a rational human being. And then I thought about this for 5 seconds and said, oh, wait a minute, there's absolutely, all of my thinking on the matter was completely absurd. And so I was entirely disabused of any possibility of religious notions. And it's sort of been a downward spiral ever since then. I think that a better term for what you guys have been calling nihilism, and I sometimes call nihilism, is absolute atheism. And this is a term that Michel Houellebecq uses, which is that I'm definitely an atheist in the most comprehensive sense. I just recognize things that that secular people profess to believe in. I recognize those which still proceed from the religious impulse, and I refuse to believe in them. And my refusal to believe in any notion of transcendent morality or even local morality, any kind of moral discussion of any sort, essentially, is a form of this absolute atheism.
So I grew up raised by parents who were 100% non-religious, except in theory, like in word. So they said they were Muslim, and so I grew up Muslim. And if you are Muslim, it's not exactly like other religions. You are bound to being Muslim, right? If you are born to a Muslim father, you are Muslim, and you always will be. And to say you are not means you must immediately be murdered, right? It's a little different than other religions, but not entirely. So my parents said they were Muslim, and we didn't eat pork because of that, and we fasted during Ramadan, so it's a month-long sunrise to sunset. You don't eat, and I think that's it. Those are the only things, and then absolutely everything else. They didn't know the first thing about what you should do, or praying or wearing your hijab, your head covering, or just absolutely nothing. So you could say they were devout hypocrites, basically. That's the way I would like to put it. And so I grew up my entire life from the time I was born until well into college, saying if anyone asked me, they said, "Are you religious? Do you believe in God?" I would say, yes, I'm Muslim and I believe in God. he then proceeded to ask me any questions on the subject. Every single word out of my mouth would be that I did not believe in God. So it's kind of a weird thing to ask. So you could say my stance on the matter has never changed. I have never, since the day I was born, believed in God or any aspect of religion at all. But for a very large part of my life, until I was older, I did say I believed in God.
Are the two of you, would you consider yourselves social creatures?
No. What is the opposite?
Antisocial creatures?
Not strong enough.
You could describe, our behavior as embodying a sort of polyamorous philosophy, I guess. But there is no philosophy behind it whatsoever. I certainly would not prescribe it. I mean, I would prescribe that approach much less than I would prescribe marriage for people, because it's much harder than marriage, and much more perilous. And so to call it a philosophy would be entirely wrong. I think it's probably, generally speaking, a bad idea. However, it is irrationally dogmatic to be closed to the possibility of maximizing the amount of love that one has in one's life, merely because that's like an idea that exists, or merely because our species has, for various reasons, been selected in the direction of preferring monogamy. It is not obvious that that is the best arrangement, and to the extent to which one can figure out a way to maximize happiness and maximize love for all parties concerned, as long as you're being open and honest, there's no reason to be resistant to that. Right? The notion of having more than one person in a relationship, if all three parties love each other and trust each other and respect each other and can figure out how to make that work without getting on each other's nerves, seems like an inherently fine idea, just as inherently fine and right as two people or any other combination. And the thing that makes it hard, however, and this underscores my point about evolution being at odds with human happiness, is that we are endowed, especially males, for various reasons that are obvious and have even been calculated very precisely by evolutionary psychologists. It is a characteristic of human males to have sexual jealousy for one's partners, and this is a very aversive, negative emotion that we experience, and it feels very much like anxiety. Sensations of unpleasant physiological arousal occur when contemplating one's partner having sex with someone else, right? But there is this emotion, this reaction, is something that serves the needs of humans, and relates to all sorts of things that are very particular to us as primates with large brains and the size of the female birth canal and all sorts of complexities around all of this that have been fairly well analyzed and understood, right? And so, it serves this emotion very clearly and obviously serves the needs of our genes to replicate themselves. Yet, in no way, it very clearly limits the amount of love we are capable of having in our lives without also having an unpleasant emotion. And it's one of my favorite examples of why the needs of evolution are very clearly at odds with human happiness, right? And the possibility of maximizing that. It doesn't mean that it's... some people suffer more or less from this, from this emotion and from the insecurities around it. But I think probably for everyone it takes a little bit of work to be able to get over that, and that itself is tragic.
Do you feel like your relationship is closer and stronger than that of most married couples?
Absolutely. I mean, the question strikes me as absurd. Yeah.
I think most married couples hate each other.
Yeah.
So what makes the two of you the exception?
The best answer of all would be to instruct our viewers to go read Cat's Cradle, a novel by Kurt Vonnegut, and the description of the made-up term for the relationship that Ryan and I have is a dupros, and it's described in some detail in the book, and it's well illustrated. Everyone can go read that. It's a much better description than anything we would say, too. So we'll be walking down the street, and someone will walk by us and mutter a few choice words, and I'll yell. The person will get out of earshot or not, and we'll be heading in opposite directions, and they'll pass us. And I'll say, "Shut up," dismissively. Dismissing everything about that human being and their entire worldview and everything about the possibility of their existence being tenable, all with a single word. And Ryan will smile back at me and be happy that I just did that. And,
I think we're never closer than at those moments. Our way of being affectionate towards each other is simply being each other in each other's presence, recognizing how inherently rewarding that is for the other person.
Tell me about your ice cream ritual.
Oh, we've been very delinquent lately. So everyone knows Toscanini's makes the best ice cream in the whole world. So good that it, almost transcends the concept of ice cream, right? I mean, it's ridiculous because ice cream is a category of substance that we call many, many things, and for other things to occupy that same category as the substance that Toscanini serves is obviously an error in categorization. But putting all of that aside, we like Toscanini's a lot. We tend to go there a lot.
Also Gus,
the guy that runs Toscanini's, a good example of a intuitive nihilist.
Absolutely.
Like if you asked him if he was a nihilist, he probably... I mean, I have no idea what he would say, but the one thing I'm sure is that it would be really funny. But that guy does not give a fuck. Yeah.
We went to Toscanini's every single day for like 2 years in a row, and we probably saw him there every single day or thereabouts. He's never acknowledged our existence in the slightest whatsoever, or noticed that we exist. Like that. Now that is a proprietor of a good establishment.
Do you consider yourself a happy person?
I would say I'm content. I don't really believe in happiness.
When you say you don't believe in happiness, do you mean that happiness doesn't exist, or do you mean that it's not possible to attain happiness?
Happiness is clearly something that exists in fleeting moments. That is, that will be gone faster than it came on. But contentedness can last.